let's look at kind of the macro picture here because Boston Consulting Group, BCG, recently released some guidelines for how companies should approach artificial intelligence. And they base this on something they call the Responsible AI Leader Blueprint. So, this is essentially a set of steps and frameworks and guidelines to start thinking about how to use AI ethically and responsibly. And the way they kind of define that is responsible AI is, quote, developing and operating artificial intelligence systems that align with organizational values and widely accepted standards of right and wrong while achieving transformative business impact. Now, we'll kind of unpack that in a second, but basically, they recommend that any organization considering or trying to apply AI, which eventually will be all of them, take 4 key actions. And very quickly, they are: 1, establish responsible AI as a strategic priority with senior leadership support. Number 2, set up and empower responsible AI leadership. Number 3, foster responsible AI awareness and culture throughout the organization. And finally, number 4, conduct an AI risk assessment. Now, we're going to talk a bit at a high level about this, but really here's the kicker is that BCG isn't just publishing these guidelines on a lark or for its help. They say these are more necessary than ever, given the imminent arrival of the European Union's AI Act. Now, this is one of the first broad-ranging regulatory frameworks on AI from governments that is expected to come into force next year. ECG actually really expects other governments to follow suit with their own regulations once this act is out as well. So what we have here is a major consulting firm offering advice on responsible AI to help businesses get ahead of what it sounds like will be a near future with much more increased AI regulation. Does this kind of gel with what you're seeing in terms of the market?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely what we're hearing as well from our friends and thought leaders in this space that pay close attention to the regulations and the privacy acts and things like that. Um, I mean, what we keep hearing is just behave as though you're under the European Union's AI Act guidelines, whether you're in Europe or America, whatever. That stricter regulations are inevitable, and you should start behaving now in the best interest of the consumer, that you should not try and cut corners, not take advantage of lax guidelines or oversight here, and just be good corporate citizens when it comes to using this. Now, I had bold-faced in some prep notes this widely accepted standards of right and wrong.
Yeah.
In today's society, I would love to know what is widely accepted anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like everything is 50-50. What one side thinks is right, everybody thinks is wrong on the other side, and vice versa. So that is the challenge from a brand perspective, and from your company is what is right and wrong. And hopefully you have core values, and hopefully you have ethical guidelines within your organization and moral guidelines that guide your company. And so this becomes an easy conversation. But I think the real key for us, and we talked about this in the book, in the more human chapter, is you need from the beginning to think about the ethical use of this stuff. It gives you superpowers, which you can use for good or for evil, and it's only going to get more powerful. And you have to make decisions that are in the best interest of your stakeholders, your employees, your community, your customers, your partners, whoever they may be. So I think just at a high level, while your organization may be still at the phase where they're trying to pick a couple pilot projects and this seems far off, it's not, because depending on the use case you're choosing, just pilot even, you may already start running into some ethical decisions around, where that data is coming from, which model you're using, what company built the model you're using, the company behind the AI that you're choosing to buy. Like it's probably best to go ahead and have a basic framework of your own ethical guidelines in place as you start moving into working with AI technology.
That's a really good point. And kind of one of the things that BCG recommends, and I know we have recommended in the book and to partners and people, audiences that we talk to, you mentioned kind of a framework. We would call that, another word for that is an AI ethics policy, which is essentially, a framework to say how your company views AI, what its position is, what it will and won't do with the technology. Could you talk a little bit about what you see being important in an AI ethics policy and why this even matters? I mean, some people might hear that term and think this is kind of a vanity exercise, but in fact, it's a really important document to not only have, but actually publish.
Yeah, I'll kind of answer by going through the two examples we use in the book. So in the more human chapter, we analyzed from the perspective of Google, so like a platform company, cloud company, technology company that's building AI and their guiding principles to what they will build and how they will use it. And then actually we do cite BCG, a 2021 report they did on 7 elements of a responsible AI policy. I don't know if there's a rule of 7 tied to ethics, but they're both 7. So I'll just kind of run through these really quick. So on the Google side, the 7 principles that guide its objective for AI applications, and you can take these and apply them to your use of the AI. So be socially beneficial. Uh, it's pretty straightforward. Avoid creating or reinforcing unfair bias. Good guidelines for marketers in any case. Be built and tested for safety. In that case, you're relying on the vendors that they've done it, but you need to also then do it yourself. Be accountable to people. That's the human-centered idea of AI. Incorporate privacy design principles. So make sure you're not dehumanizing people within the process and invading their privacy and using data you shouldn't. Uphold high standards of scientific excellence. Be made available for uses that accord with these principles. So that's Google's. And then real quickly, I'll run through BCG, which they analyzed 7 generally accepted dimensions of responsible AI, is how we phrased it in the book. Very high level. It was accountability, transparency and explainability, fairness and equity, safety, security, and robustness of the AI systems, data and privacy governance, social and environmental impact mitigation, so you don't have negative impact on society and the environment, and then the human plus AI, that the AI is not there to replace the human. And you can, make this tangible in that writer example. The AI doesn't exist to cut your writing staff from 10 to 5. That is not why it's built. It's not why you should be using it. That is not a human-centered approach to applying AI. The human-centered approach is saying we have 10 writers. We actually could produce the same output with 5. How can we redistribute the other 5 people and their time to create more fulfilling work, to do interesting things we didn't have the time to do before, to be a better social citizen, to be a better brand? Like, that's what you should be doing. And so that's why I say you need to start with a framework of an ethical guideline, because if you allow yourself to look at the efficiency gains and say, well, we can drop our staff 20% next year if we can gain 40% on content output, that's the wrong way to look at this. And in the end, it's a losing approach. So it's just critical that these conversations are had at a high level within your organization, that you realize what this technology is going to do, and you have frameworks to help you do it in an ethical and human-centered way.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, as kind of a final thought here, one really important thing BCG mentioned is they encourage people to think of the wide-ranging impact of GDPR, which, as every marketer knows, caused a lot of headaches, a lot of soul searching, and a lot of sleepless nights for a lot of brands that had to adapt to a European law, even if they weren't based in Europe, because it applied to all EU citizens, many of whom they were marketing to. The same thing applies to AI regulations in the EU. I mean, you're going to be using tools that market to certain people in the EU that you're going to have to follow regulations for. You're going to potentially be using data and models trained on data from EU citizens. This will have an impact on you.
Yep. Yeah, it's a global economy. I mean, you got to be looking around and understanding how quickly this space is moving, and you need to be proactive in doing things the right way.
Absolutely.